Okay, welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at a tropical disturbance out in the Atlantic and some other things in the Atlantic, but the main focus is going to be on this tropical wave that everyone in the weather community is having a lot of hype on, a lot of questions for a lot of people. So we're going to try and answer some of that in today's video. So here is the satellite imagery. All right, good news, it is working now. So, this is the satellite imagery. One thing we noticed, we have a lot of showers and thunderstorms impacting the Puerto Rico and some of the islands here. No surface low, really. We did have a little bit vortices yesterday, but in today's, what we had is a lot of convection and still a lot of convection and even more blowing up throughout the nighttime. So, any possible way this has maybe a low level circulation, and really the answer is no. Right now I do not see any low level circulation. I do see some winds doing like this, and then I see kind of winds like this, and then winds are coming out like this. So somewhere in this area we have an access through Puerto Rico into the southern areas. It's a very broad area of circulation. No low level center yet. I was trying to see if there was a low level center as we continue, but only thing I'm starting to maybe see is some mid-level within the convection, maybe some mid-level circulation, but majority of it is just a broad area of low pressure, nothing too significant. Alright, we take a look at the National Hurricane Center. This is a 60% in the next 7 days and the next 48 hours. Nothing, I do expect that to change too. But the changes today is pretty remarkable what we were looking at yesterday, and everyone in the weather community was like, oh my goodness, the GFS is showing the fantasy runs. And I'm actually going to really in-depth on the GFS and compare the other runs. So let's get right into some of the models. So let's just go back into the 0Z run, the first day of July 30th. Let's take a look at this tropical wave on the GFS that everybody was like, oh my goodness, the GFS is going crazy. All right. I think it was the 0Z. It might have been the 6Z, but nope. So first thing was, it started showing a storm in the Gulf, develops, becomes a hurricane into Houston. All right. That was probably a little bit too much, but it did add a storm there. We go to 6Z. We had, once again, another hurricane in the Gulf forming out of this system and moving along the whole Gulf. Alright, that was very fantasy too. That one, those two solutions right there probably wasn't. But the difference was it at least had the wave going into the Gulf. So let's take a look at the 12Z of yesterday. We saw a little bit difference. We saw the wave develop in the Gulf right here. Not too strong. Now impacts near the Houston area as a weak tropical depression or just a tropical wave. Then we take a look at the 18Z. And the 18Z had now a way different look on this. A lot of people are talking about this, that we had a storm that developed in the Gulf from this wave. Moves south and then becomes a major hurricane in Louisiana. So this is where it begins. Because if we take a look at the 0Z, the trends continue. We now saw a storm developing in the Gulf from this wave still. Right there. Just off the Florida's panhandle, nothing too much. Move south, we get a storm develop in the Gulf. Kind of lingers right near Florida, the panhandle of Florida into Alabama. So we started noticing the trend towards the Florida. But GFS has been on to something with with keeping the storm closer there. Then we take a look at 6Z, and it had pretty much the same thing here. We take a crucial look. We get the wave to develop later in time once it gets a little bit closer to the Florida Keys. I think that's going to continue to change, But we had a storm develop in the Gulf into a hurricane, into the Panhandle. But look how it just stalls for days on days. And this is where everybody was like, oh my goodness, the GFS is totally off. The GFS is not really showing this right now. It's a drunk model. And I won't even criticize them, because I did the same thing where I was like, okay, GFS is probably on something. GFS is not looking good. But today, everybody is shocked and wow that all the models have trended towards the GFS. Maybe not with the strength, but with the track and the stalling. So this was 6Z. Then we take a look at 12Z. A little bit closer, still in the Panhandle, but look. We had a storm to develop near Florida's Keys, moves into the Gulf, develops into a tropical storm, slams the Big Bend of Florida as a tropical storm, 1004 right there. Then moves south, but strengthens. The Brown Ocean effect too helps it. Strengthens into maybe a strong tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane at this point. Sits over Tampa Bay, Florida for a little bit. Then moves out in the Gulf, starts picking up some space, becomes a Category 2 hurricane, hits the Panhandle, moves pretty slow through it, and then moves out and then stalls over Alabama and Mississippi. Alright, everybody was like, oh my god, the GFS is wrong. And let's take a look at what's causing the storm to stall on the GFS. And what has showed this is this storm comes here, and look, we got very weak currents. We got strong high pressure right here, kind of helping to push that way. We got weak pressures to the north, weak pressures to the southern side too, and to the eastern side. The only strong part of this was this part, but this was pretty far out over here. So we had some weak currents over here, so that's why it started stalling. But let's continue to take this out. Alright, and look, this, once it makes landfall there, we got weak currents all over. And look, right there, we got no current helping this thing to move. We have a cold front over here. We got weak pressures to the north, weak to the west, east, and south. So what ends up happening is this high pressure digs back in more, and we see this storm to shift south and then hits this part of the Florida. Alright, and we see a high pressure here, and what a high pressure does is drag the storm like this. So that's why the GFS in today's runs is showing a stalling type system. Alright, and look, see right there, it tries and strengthen, and then we see it start moving, and then it gets absorbed with the cold front. So, not saying that GFS is exactly going to happen, but now let's take a look at the European. The model you guys might be like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now? So, let's take a look. We look at 24 hours, nothing. We continue to look, and we get no storm. Honestly, just like the GFS, and I think this is a little bit off. I think we could see a storm sooner. Develops near Cuba a little sooner than the GFS. Starts seeing the wave. Enters the Gulf, you guys. Hits the Big Bend of area as like 1014. This is probably at most a very, very weak tropical depression. Starts strengthening a little bit. Moves south just like the GFS. But instead of moving back to the Panhandle, it stalls over Florida. Why is that? We got weak currents. But this will start getting dragged to the north here. And that reason is because we have a cold front right here. Gonna help it. But until that cold front comes, we got weak currents all around this system. Alright. So, today's run of the Euro shows more of a GFS. But look how it just sits and it strengthens into a very powerful tropical storm as it continues. And this actually becomes a 997. Maybe not a hurricane, all right, but it does do very similar of the GFS. We take a look at the 0Z run of this, all right, and this is what it was showing. The storm was already gone, all right, but basically we didn't have any weak currents. We had a strong high pressure over here, all right, that helped this to do this, all right. That's why the storm does something like this. Lifts a little bit there, and then boom, moves out. And today's run stays more south, does something like this, moves south, and then something like this, all right. So it trended towards the GFS. So the European has caved in to the GFS solution than what we were seeing before, all right. The intensity on this is not at all certain. We still don't know of the intensity. GFS shows a hurricane. European shows a tropical storm at best in its lifetime. So we're really going to have to watch these main two models, all right. We take a look now at the newest icon coming out. This is the newest icon, and we're going to take a look. So, has a storm, moves into Cuba, but look, one thing we notice, it moves south a little bit, develops in the Gulf, you guys, into a much stronger storm, and actually moves closer to the GFS solution. So it continues to show that, but here it is. Makes landfall in Tampa Bay as a tropical storm, and moves very closely towards Georgia's coastline, but starts stalling. We take a look at the 12Z. Look at where it was. It was a little bit more further off the coast. So basically, the icon has continued to fall in with the GFS solution. So if this continues to verify in the next coming days, the GFS will be the winning model in this system, and for the second time beaten the European this year. So we're really going to have to watch this. GFS this year has been very interesting, and everyone that stopped believing in the GFS is starting to make a comeback and prove the European wrong. So maybe the European King Euro is starting to lack, and right now we have a battle between King GFS and King Euro. But I do not want to put it in that terms, because I want you guys to watch both models. I don't want to see Euro biased people. I want to see them, if they're going to make a forecast, use the models that are given. Use the data, use the environment. Because if you just go on by one model, then you cannot really make a forecast and expect people to believe you, because you're only using one model or for you to be right. All right. So let's take a look at the Canadian. Has the Canadian really done that? And the answer is yes. Develops now a low, very weak low, just like the Euro, into the Gulf of Mexico. All right. Hits the Big Bend of Florida, and then comes out like the icon near the Georgia's coast, but it stalls for multiple days near Georgia. So now all the models are showing some type of stall. All right. Who was the first model to see that? And that was the GFS. Who was the first one to see the trend towards the Gulf of Mexico? The GFS. So right now, GFS does have the upper hand and might be ending up to be right at the end. All right. Before I get criticized, why am I looking at the mesoscale model? The only reason is because it goes out 84 hours out, and I like to look at all models and just see for fun. All right. So this is the NAM, and what the difference is with the NAM that I see is in the short term, it develops this storm a little quicker. Why do I think the NAM might be on something? Because of the satellite imagery and what's going on right now. We'll talk a little bit more about that before I end this video. But it does develop a very well storm heading for the Keys of the Florida. rides the Florida's coast as at least a tropical depression or tropical storm. So even the NAM that everybody's not really going to be bothering to look at, we should look at it because it's in short term, it's actually might be right on it that it develops a little sooner, and it does go into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's the only thing I want to talk about with that model. Nothing really else. We take a look at 12Z of the RGEM. This is just another. I'm just seeing if it shows anything, and not really, just an open wave entering the Gulf. But I'm just showing all these models because I want to show you guys what has happened in the last 24 hours since I've made my last update. Soon, the GFS will be on 18Z. Stay tuned to my shorts and my channel. I might be making a community post about it, giving you guys the latest update on the GFS. But right now, I just want every Florida people and anywhere actually in the path of this or the potential path to really watch the track, really watch what you watch out for, because you don't know. You got some of those people out there that hyperactive it. You got those people that under do it and be like, oh, there's nothing. But when it happens, it's over your house. It's nothing anymore, right? So that's why I'm saying that. So let's take a look at some of the conditions, all right, in the short term of the conditions for this, okay? We took the SST anomalies, and this is a bit worrying to me, you guys. Boom. Look at the Gulf of Mexico and the Bahamas, just off the South Carolina's coast, even near Puerto Rico, you guys, and all these areas. We got 30 degrees Celsius, very widespread in the Caribbean. But once you look at the Gulf of Mexico, yeah, that's a no sign right there. You do not want low wind shear, favorable conditions in the Gulf, all right? Especially in this area I just circled. We got widespread 31 to 32 degrees Celsius near Tampa Bay, Florida, you guys. The waters here are still warming, all right? If this system has the favorability, has a core, before entering this line right here, we really need to watch out for potential major strengthening. I'm not going to call it rapid intensification because nothing indicates that right now. But we're really going to have to watch the system in the short term because it could really help depend what happens when it enters the Gulf. One thing is the waters, 32 degrees Celsius is about 88 to 90 degrees waters, you guys, Fahrenheit. All right, this is the latest year. Going into the Gulf of Mexico, Florida's area, we got maybe 10 to 5 knots of shear. Maybe 15 to 20 miles an hour shear, all right? But the conditions are very favorable with very low shear as this tropical wave continues to move west. There is some shear on it right now, maybe about 10 to about 25 miles an hour, maybe even 30 miles an hour along the Florida's coast right here. But look at the waters. Very, very warm waters. And where this wave is right now, 83 degrees. And what it's expected to become into 85 to about 90 degrees waters. So we're really going to have to watch. All right. So this is the ocean heat content right here. And wow. Look at the eddy that's in the Gulf of Mexico. We got above 175 OCH in the Gulf of Mexico, you guys. But look at the path of this storm and where it's forecasted to become. Very favorable conditions. Above 100 OCH across is the depth of the warm water. So we got very good OCH. We got low wind shear. We got not too much dry air. I'm actually going to want to take a look at the dry air before I go, because that's like the main thing right now that everybody was talking about. We take a look at the water vapor here. Alright. Let this just load. And here it is. Look at the water vapor graph of this. Very moist now in the wave. This is just a huge embedded wave now with a lot of moisture. And we're really going to have to watch. Alright. Big time rotation. Big time moist. And especially into the Gulf of Mexico. You can see that there all through the Bahamas. Alright. So, one more thing I'm going to take a look at is this. Okay. Here it is. Here's the latest satellite imagery. And we're going to be really watching the satellite throughout tonight and tomorrow. Alright. There it is. Deep thunderstorm convection continuing to fire. Starting to what I'm seeing here. It's trying to consolidate. Looks to me just north of the islands now. What I'm seeing is some consolidation, maybe a low-level spin trying to develop in this part. We're really going to have to watch. Because if we do get a low-level spin as it continues to pass Puerto Rico, we are really in trouble, you guys. Alright? Really in trouble. Sorry for how long it was, you guys. I really had to watch and give you guys the latest update on this. We're going to have another update tomorrow.